Talk a bit about the piece that was played July 1st. It's for string quartet and soprano. It's in three movements, and they performed the second movement. So, tell us
Yeah.
about that piece and how your interest in melding these two genres together. How does it come out in that piece? And what was the text?
So the text is from Andromache's Farewell. The Samuel Barber, of course, has a really popular piece using uh, the entire monologue, soliloquy that Andromache gives to her son as the Greeks are taking him away. And I, with this, with the, I had the goal of trying to change the lyrics in my own way of um, how I may write this as a almost like a sad pop song, something like that. And the three movements are inspired actually from Brett Dean's second string quartet, also for soprano and string quartet, uh, about Ophelia. And the first movement is it begins with these like guttural sounds, right, and just rhythmic textures, and that's what the first movement in my piece actually does. So I kind of I used the Dean piece as a model actually, where it begins with these guttural energetic sounds and then a quieter middle section, then back to that. And the first piece of that is just that. The second piece is sort of an answer to the first piece, where the first piece has just Andromache exclaiming this agony of telling her son that he must die, right? And the second piece is her finding silence to speak almost directly to her son as if he understands that this is going on. And that's the title of the movement, Do You Know? And I, I view it as a moment where Andromache, everything around her, all this noise, all these Trojans being killed by the Greeks, and all this commotion going on, everything is suddenly quiet, and she's speaking directly to her son. And then at moments, it's almost like she's no longer imagining him as being a baby, but just like this is the last opportunity really to speak with him. And so she's having this real conversation of just, do you recognize this is going on? And then almost a visual representation of the child falling down the mountain through the string quartet. And so that's where the second movement is. And the third one is her moving towards more exclaiming at outside effects of this, like cursing Helen and things like that. So the piece overall is meant to kind of explore these these emotions that Andromache has, where the second movement is the most intimate, as it's her exploring this short relationship with her son.
As we were talking before we went on, I went to YouTube and I saw a 6 minute piece for a very large orchestra with the unusual title, I Do Not Hate You, Caesar. Now, when I heard that piece, this is before we discussed your interest in blending folk music, I just heard a great big orchestra with some beautiful chords and a little bit dark. Tell us, and anybody watching can, I think that's your only piece on YouTube. It's called I Do Not Hate You, Caesar by Ahmed. And tell us a little bit about that piece and where you got the title.
Yeah, I love the title. Well, very soon it won't be my only piece on YouTube, but I'm happy it's up there. It was with the Costa Rica, the Sinfónica Nacional de Costa Rica, for a composer advancement program, the Los Angeles Film Conducting Intensive, run by Angel Velez and Conrad Pope. And it was it was just an experience to compose a piece with the orchestra conducted for their concert.
You
And
conducted. That's you
yeah,
conducting. Yeah.
yeah. And actually, a fun fact: the president of Costa Rica was invited. His wife ended up coming, and she talked to me a little bit about the piece afterwards. It was a really nice experience. But regardless, the title is from one of my favorite poems. It's a comic poem by the poet Catullus. And Catullus wrote this one short thing. I do not hate you, Caesar. I do not care if you are white or black. It was just it almost felt like a talk show, like late night talk show reaction to, maybe the demagogue of the time. And I've always just liked that, and I found it funny. It's just like a funny thing to say. And I so I sought to create that, both the rustic nature of maybe just Rome and all that, and the comedy of this. I don't know. I find that there's a comedy in beginning something serene and then going loud, and I think that's where I was going for with that. I was going for just this loud kind of symphonic sound, homage to maybe film music and things like that. So the chords are nice spread out and all of that. Yeah, it's one of those pieces, and a lot of my pieces do this, where I explore maybe some aspect of comedy, but how I kind of take comedy in life, where I really think it's just moment and then a contrasting moment that's almost kind of cheeky in some way, and I think
Right.
that's what I Do Not Hate You, Caesar is.
Now you studied at Juilliard, and if the bio that I have in front of me is accurate, you have a full scholarship at Peabody Conservatory. And has that started yet?
Yeah, so my master's program begins next or this September. With Juilliard, it was an interesting program. I was in the evening division, their night school, and I was in there for um, technically could still be in there, but I've been in there for about 6, 7 years.
Really?
Yeah, and it was a situation where I taught myself music a lot for when I was about 10 till I was about 20, and then I got a teacher for the first time, and then I began mainly in the basics of theoretical music, and then moving on, and then the Juilliard classes allowed me to get maybe conservatory style training, while I worked in restaurants, bartended, and things like that.
Yeah.
Pretty solid bartender, I say. And I, yeah. So the Juilliard period of my education was a place where I could where I was able to freely explore um, through kind of composition projects, but also grow musically. I took a lot of ear training courses, theory and things like that,
Hmm.
and it was an avenue to get conservatory style courses, training, really the only way I could at the time, because I had to figure out music in some way. So that was the space that allowed me to explore music, and thankfully that grew into Peabody, which is where I'm beginning for my master's, and we'll see from there. But um, yeah, I'd say the Joy courses allowed me to write really fast, and
Hmm.
that's something I yeah, I fortunately have been able to do. And I think at Peabody, I'm going to explore maybe writing a little slower, so try and explore more pieces and just to really dive into a work. Right?
Well, you're a fascinating guy, and the music that I've heard so far, at least that one piece on YouTube, is very compelling, and so I expect big things from you. I think we'll be hearing quite a bit from Ahmed Karam in the future. I wish you the best at Peabody, and keep going, and we'll look forward to following your career.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Take,
I wish I had sent to you beforehand orchestral piece I wrote last year. It's called Habina. But I'm trying to kind of work with an orchestra maybe to get a good
yeah,
recording of it. But there's another piece on YouTube, Snapback, from the Mostly Modern Festival,
okay.
chamber work. I'd check it out. But yeah, thanks, Steve. It was great meeting you.
Thank you. Good talking with you. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Performed at Carnegie Hall in the July 1st gala. Jessica, was that your first performance at Carnegie?
So fortunately, I'm part of a choir in the city that sings in Carnegie Hall twice a year.
Ah,
Um, so I am so lucky to be able to do that. But this was my first solo in Carnegie Hall, which was very exciting.
were you nervous?
A little bit. I mean, I think everybody gets nervous, and I think you just direct your jitters into either focus or you let it take over. And luckily, I'm past the letting it take over part.
Right. Now, you are originally from Voorheesville, New York, and
Yes.
according to your bio, you've been performing since a very young age. You've already performed, as you said, at Carnegie Hall, and you currently reside in Brooklyn, New York. Tell us a little bit about the piece that you performed in at Carnegie.
So, Andromache is a three movement piece for string quartet and soprano, which is very rare. You do not see that combination ever, if often at all. And Do You Know is the second movement of the three movement piece.
And it's composed by Ahmed Karam.
Yes, Ahmed Karam wrote that piece.
Karam. Now, did you have a chance to work with him? Was he there?
Yes, so I am in a choir with Ahmed. So that's how
Ah,
I met Ahmed. And so since we're both in the city, we were able to meet up a couple times to go over what he would like and how he wanted the piece to be. So it was a really interesting story, which was super fun. And then we actually met up in Central Park to practice in a tunnel because the city, So, but it was a great time. The piece is beautifully written. The string quartet consists of two violins, a viola, and a cello, and it really does display the beauty of a cello as well. So,
right. It's a very unusual opportunity to be able to work with the composer of a piece.
mhm.
And did you give him any suggestions about how he wrote the piece, or was it more the other way around?
It was definitely a collaboration.
Ah,
There were times when he was like, "Okay, what could I do here that would be better for you?" This is my idea of what I want it to sound like in general. So I think working directly with the composer, I think for him it was the first time he worked with the soprano directly in how the piece was composed and what he would like in that way. And I said to him, if you want to try different things, just give it to me and we'll see what you like the best. Because sometimes just hearing it in the voice is different than on paper.
well, there's a long history of performers who give advice to composers. Some of them take it and some don't. There's a famous incident I've been reading about with Beethoven, and there was a violinist by the name of George Bridgetower, and Beethoven was so enthralled with this musician that he allowed him to give him advice about the piece ended up being known as the Kreutzer Sonata. And so there have been instances of that. So that must have been a wonderful collaboration. Tell us a little bit about the piece and the sound of the piece and the style that it's written in.
So it's definitely a modern piece, and
Ah,
the violins and cellos and all the strings definitely move in and out of each other. And it's one of those pieces that, as the singer, you need to know where you're at because otherwise you're just going to get off track. So there are definitely spots where Ahmed was very generous and like doubling in the violin or doubling in the viola. But it definitely was a piece that you really had to focus and make sure that you were on beat to make sure that everything flowed exactly the way it was supposed to.
was this a world premiere or had the piece been performed before?
It had been performed before, but never in Carnegie Hall, and this was Ahmed's Carnegie Hall debut as well.
Oh,
So
so
that was great.
so you were debuting as a soloist at Carnegie Hall, although you've been in the choir, and he was
Correct.
debuting as a composer. Very, very exciting. Now, I
Mhm.
noticed in your bio that you are known as the opera singer of Central Park. Now, how did tell us a little bit about that?
So when I moved down here about 10 years ago, I was working, doing whatever you had to do to make ends meet, and I realized I wasn't really singing. So I got my stuff together, got a speaker and an iPod, went out and started street performing.
I see.
And yeah, so now it's a regular gig. I do it 4 days a week. I have people who come and see me actually from all over the world. There are people who have visited from different states, people who return every time they go to New York to specifically come and see me. And it's such a wonderful experience. So, but I'll see people in the street be like, "You're the opera singer from Central Park, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So that's so much fun.
Now, what's a typical concert? What's your repertoire like in Central Park?
So I do a mix. So I do mainly opera, and then I add in some, standards. So I'll do like Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but I'll do it in a higher key, or I'll do Besame Mucho in a classical way. And then, of course, there are kids who come up and ask me to sing Frozen and other things like that. But, it's a really fun time.
That's great. And whereabouts in Central Park? The next time I'm in New York, what's your schedule? You there every week?
Yeah, 4 days a week. Wednesdays and weekends are the main days. And you know where the Angel Fountain is? It's like the 72nd Street crossover. I sing in the Bethesda Terrace, which is the arcade underneath with all the beautiful tile ceilings.
Oh,
And
yes.
it echoes, and I'm so spoiled by the space.
Yeah, it must be
Mhm.
quite an acoustic there. I
Yeah.
notice also from your bio that you are a member of a virtual choir that's called the Dear Evan Hansen Virtual Choir. What is that all about?
So the Dear Evan Hansen virtual choir was something that happened over the pandemic, and they sent out an invite and said, "Whoever wants to sing this song, we'll put you all in a virtual choir." So that was what I submitted for that, which was really interesting because they take hundreds of people, and whoever that editor is must be blessed by someone to put it all together and make sure that it sounds all good together.
And the choir is named after Evan Hansen. Tell us a bit about him, if he's
Well,
the one.
Dear Evan Hansen is a Broadway show.
Yes,
So it's a song taken from the Broadway show, and
I see.
that's why they called it the Dear Evan Hansen Virtual Choir.
I see. And I also note that you've performed with the American Ballet Theater. Now, how does
Mhm.
what do you do with the theater? How do you with the American Ballet? You don't do any dancing yourself, do
Oh no, 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 they
you?
would not like that. I could probably do a plie and then run off stage. But one of the conductors that I work with, one of the groups that he puts together, will sometimes sing for the American Ballet Theater. So we'll all squeeze in underneath the stage with the orchestra. It gets a little tight, and you hear all the thump, thump, thump of the dancing. But it's a great opportunity, and it's so fun to see. And yeah, that was my experience with ABT.
And what sort of repertoire are you singing for a
With
ballet?
ABT, I think the one we did twice was a piece called Siberia, so it was more of a like um, a Slavic piece with a lot of different tempos rather than a typical classical ballet.
I see.
Hmm.
And you performed as well at the Apollo Theater. Now that must have been
Mm,
quite exciting too. And it says
yeah,
in your bio that you not only performed, and it's known to be a kind of a tough crowd, uh,
yeah,
but they weren't too tough on you because you got invited back.
yeah. So I I wasn't nervous to sing at the Apollo because after my audition, everybody who was there was like super excited to have me and really nice. And then I got there, and the one of the girls is singing before me, and she gets booed and buzzed off. And the rest of us waiting in the wings looked at each other and were kind of like, "Oh, right, this happens." And I go, "Oh, I'm singing opera. This is not. This could happen. I just got to stay strong in what it is." So luckily that didn't happen. It was a great experience. It was a lot of cheering. There were people who came up to me afterwards and were like, "You should have won that." A dance group won. So they're like, "No, you got snubbed," which is super nice to hear.
Right.
And the staff there actually told me from their experience of being there for like 20, 30 plus years, they think I'm the first opera singer who has not gotten booed off the stage. So I'm like, good. Let's keep that track going. So yeah, that was a
What
great
was your
time.
repertoire that night? Do you remember some of the arias you sang?
Yeah, I just sang "O mio babbino caro."
Ah, I see.
Hmm.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to close by taking you back to Carnegie Hall. And tell me a little bit again about working with the composer. Was that in the weeks before the concert or the days before? How much time did you actually have to work with him?
So I only found out about the concert 5 weeks before performance. And
Oh,
within that time, he did have an edit that he wanted, which was fine. I mean, as a singer, you kind of got to roll with the punches anyway. So working with him was great, and I know him as a friend, so that was fun too.
right.
And then traveling to work with the quartet was fun because we met in a recording session. So we did that recording session together for like an hour and a half, and then we only saw each other again for the dress rehearsal and performance. So it was definitely one of those like very professional welcome to the real world moments of music where you're just like, hi, sing, bye, it was great, like, so it was good.
Do you think you'll get to perform the whole piece with him or with
I
the
really
quartet?
hope so. Yeah, I don't know if it'll be the same quartet, obviously, but I've talked to Ahmed about working with him for the first and third movement, just to sing it in general and see how it all flows, just out of my own curiosity,
Yeah.
but also because I was like, you have someone who is willing to just sit with you while you workshop stuff. Please, let me be that person. I love that collaboration.
Right.
So
Now, before I let you go, Jessica, are you at home now?
yes. Mhm.
Well, there's quite a lot of books there behind you. There's
Yeah.
it's quite a bookshelf. What's on there?
Oh, so many things. My one of my favorite books. Oh, that side. One of my favorite books is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Love that book. The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna is also like in my top two. But my boyfriend is also a film buff and into directing and all this kind of stuff. So we have half of it is all of his film stuff, and half
I
of
see.
it is all of music stuff. And we, of course, we have like a whole thing of sheet music that you have to organize every 5 seconds. But yeah, a lot.
Well, that's quite a little bookshelf you have back there. I'm sure you have a lot of books on music, of course, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Well, Jessica Thompson, thank you very much for taking time to. Oh, I need to ask you one more thing. What's coming up for you besides more singing in Central Park?
Currently that's it, but I do have other audition opportunities that I'm hoping work out. So I might start practicing Brahms Requiem and a couple other things just to
Mm.
have a couple additional things under my belt for the next couple months in audition season. So,
Did you ever read about the world premiere of the Brahms Requiem?
no.
So he knew, as you know, he knew Clara Schumann,
Hmm.
and he conducted, but he walked into the theater with Clara on his arm and
Hmm.
took her to her seat, and then ascended the podium and conducted the world premiere of the Brahms Requiem. It's
Wow.
quite a magical moment in music history. Well, thank you very much for coming by. Good luck. I'll look forward to hearing you in Central Park, and the best of luck to you in all your endeavors.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you.
Thank you, Jessica.